Hello students, welcome to Notebook. In the modern political structure, several international organizations have emerged with the goal of meeting new challenges of this evolving world. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was a need to restructure these organizations and institutions. The reforming of the United Nations Security Council is one such example of restructuring. In the second part of this video lesson, we'll study closely Indian involvement in the UN. We'll also learn about other transnational organizations involved in the global political scenario. The UN is usually perceived as the most significant international organization in contemporary world politics. For many in the world, it is symbolic of international aspirations for peace, humanity, and progress. Nonetheless, it is important to remember that international organizations cannot provide solutions to every international political situation. They can only attempt to diplomatically negotiate between nations to promote peace and cooperation and try and prevent situations of war. Countries share not only resources but also conflicts over them. There are often disputes regarding trade and foreign policy. These situations may not always lead to war. In fact, international organizations act like forums where leaders of several countries can meet, discuss their differences, and arrive at a settlement. These resolutions are often arrived at without war. It is also important to remember that an international organization is expected not to behave as an authoritarian superstate. It is created by states and are accountable to them. Some examples of international organizations are the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, the International Atomic Energy Agency, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch. International organizations help nations to come together and fight challenges arising from common issues. Disease is such an issue. Some diseases can be eradicated only if all the nations cooperate in inoculating and vaccinating their populations. Environmental issues accelerated by global warming are also faced by the world at large. Each country can try and find its own solution. However, if all major industrial powers and nations cooperated to find solutions to mitigate the damaging effects of global warming, it would be a lot more effective. Nonetheless, it is important to remember that recognizing the need to cooperate and actually cooperating are two different things. Nations may not agree on how to share costs, how best to cooperate, how to equally reap the benefits, how to ensure all countries hold their end of the bargain, etc. International organizations ensure sharing of information and close cooperation. They may also lay down mechanisms, rules, and structures to ensure proper sharing of costs and benefits. Now we shall study the evolution of the United Nations as an international organization. After the First World War, a deep need was felt globally to create an international organization to deal with conflict. This led to the formation of the League of Nations. However, it could not prevent the Second World War, a war which cost lives on an unprecedented scale. The United Nations was founded in 1945. It was deemed a successor to the League of Nations and was set up through the United Nations Charter signed by 51 nations. The UN's objective was to promote peace and cooperation and avoid international conflict or situations of war. The UN was also formed with the aim of aiding social and economic development all over the world. In 2011, the United Nations had 193 member states. In the UN General Assembly, the member states have one vote each. In the United Nations Security Council, there are 5 permanent member states: the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Russia, France, and China. These nations held permanent seats due to their victory in the Second World War, their power, and influence. The principal organs of the United Nations are the Security Council, the General Assembly, the International Court of Justice, the Secretariat, and the Trusteeships Council. Under these exist several subsidiary bodies. Also, these organs can be directly or indirectly linked to the General Assembly. One of the most important figures of the United Nations is its Secretary General. The current Secretary General is Antonio Guterres. He was appointed the 9th Secretary General and took over in 2017. He was the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and also Portugal's Prime Minister between 1995 and 2002. The United Nations consists of many different agencies and organizations. Organizations like the World Health Organization, WHO, the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, UNHRC, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, etc., deal with several social and economic issues. Reform and improvement are essential to the functioning of any organization. In the recent years, the UN has been faced with 2 kinds of reforms: a reform of the UN structure and processes, and a review of the issues under the jurisdiction of the UN. Regarding the issue of structure, there has been a demand to increase the number of permanent and non-permanent member seats. To better reflect contemporary world politics, a need to increase the number of members from Asia, South America, and Africa has been recognized. Western countries demand better budgetary procedures and administration. Some countries want the UN to play a greater role in security and peacekeeping missions. Other members, however, want the organization to focus on issues of development and humanitarian concern, health, education, environment, human rights, etc. Since the formation of the UN in 1945, several changes have taken place in the global political scenario. These are not accounted for in the structure of functioning of the United Nations. We will quickly revise what some of these changes are. The Soviet Union disintegrated in 1991. The United States of America evolved as a hegemon in a unipolar world. The relationship between the United States and the USSR became more cooperative. China grew to be a market force to reckon with. The countries and the economies of South Asia have developed since. Several new countries joined the United Nations, having been liberated from the Soviet bloc. New challenges of genocide, ethnic conflict, civil war, terrorism, and nuclear proliferation have gripped the world since 1945. Issues of climate change, environmental degradation, and epidemics have also affected the social and political landscape. That is all for this lesson. We'll discuss in the second and final part of the video lesson the reforms and jurisdiction of the United Nations. We'll also establish India's relationship with the UN in a unipolar world. See you soon. Till then, keep learning.